The Beatles did hold a lot of concerts ranging from the rooftop concert to the Stockholm concert and others, but which of those concerts are the 10 most famous? It's another wonderful episode on your favourite channel. Stick around as I unveil the 10 most famous Beatles concerts. So, make sure to like the video, hit subscribe and that bell notification as we tackle all things Beatles with new videos every week. It's a standard rock history practice not to rank the Beatles as a live band at the level of more obvious titans like The Who, Cream, the Jimi Hendrix Experience or Dylan's once he's paired with the band. Their symbiotic relationship with the studio perhaps dulls what ought to be a clear point. When the Fab Four were invested in tearing it up live, you were going to get torn up too in a good way. They could cook, and to paraphrase John Lennon in the Anthology, there was no one to touch them on a concert stage. Let's get beyond those tired, misleading, unchallenged opinions that the Beatles went through the motions as a live band, accepting that they couldn't compete with each evening's wall of sound that came in the forms of thousands of screaming teenagers, and stake out their in-concert epicenter. If you truly wish to hear the Beatles blowing the doors off all misperceptions, start with this 10-pack. 10. Sam Houston Coliseum, Houston, Texas, August 19, 1965. Frantic, frenetic, faster paced than usual, the two Beatles gigs on this day represent the sweaty zenith of Beatlemania. The band had arrived in Houston at 2 in the morning to be met by a phalanx of fans. It's the toss of a dime over which show contains more kinetic energy, in part because the fans can't get close enough to the stage, which causes the MC, Russ Knight, a local DJ known as the Weird Beard, to rave like a madman into his mic. One of his hoarse-voiced admonishments concludes with, "This is the Houston Security Beatle Division." Lennon mocks him repeatedly as if he were a headmaster back in the Quarryman days. Thank you very much, that was wonderful. If you listen to the tape, it sounds like the Beatles are drenched in sweat and loving it. The second show is maybe incrementally better for a version of Can't Buy Me Love that ups the urgency of the studio take with a face melter of a George Harrison guitar solo. 9. Candlestick Park, San Francisco, California, August 29, 1966. Time to clear away the old bromide that the Beatles were garbage on their last American tour. Well, they had their evenings where they were garbage, but as they knew that this was to be their last touring concert, the Beatles did what they were known to do and struck the great galvanizing chord of posterity. As any baseball fan will tell you, the wind was hell at Candlestick Park, and so it was on this day too, and the sound is blown around a bit on the tape of the gig made by Beatles press officer Tony Barrow. That the tape cuts off in the middle of a maniacally raunchy version of Long Tall Sally feels appropriate. Their evening services pocketed them $90,000. 8. Concert Hall, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, September 2nd, 1964. The Beatles were in a bad mood for this one, distressed at seeing only white faces in the crowd. Their musical angst was captured in a radio broadcast on WIBG, resulting in one of the best sounding live Beatles tapes. Starr pulls an "I like the band to slow down a little but also not really move" on the close of Boys, as he shouts "all right" as part plea, part admission of delight. If I Fell was even more hilarious than usual. Throughout the 1964 US tour, McCartney and Lennon would wrestle with their harmony, going off kilter at some point, such that they then start egging each other on to sound more absurd. They yell "easy now" at someone near the front of the stage who's screaming as the song starts. "I Want to Hold Your Hand" has real rhythmic buoyancy and swing. Listening to it feels like floating in the Dead Sea while listening to Count Basie tackle Mersey Beat. 7. Festival Hall, Melbourne, Australia, June 17, 1964. Ringo Starr was the hard-pressed man of the Beatles' touring days. A lot of their sound was built up from what he did in his kit, and battling the screaming fans challenged him more than the others. This was the tour where Jimmy Nichols sat in on the drums, while Starr battled tonsillitis instead of teeny boppers. The two shows on this day marked his return, and the second one is of special interest. His bandmates are clearly jacked to have the drummer back. This is the only time in Beatles history that you can say they did a stomping version of Till There Was You, with Starr laying into his toms as Lennon grinds out chords on his rhythm guitar. McCartney does the welcoming back honours with "It's very nice for all of us to have back with us now, Ringo." As you'd expect, the crowd rejoins with a cacophony of feta-free joy. 6. Empire Theatre, Liverpool, England, December 7th, 1963. What fun this is! The Empire is where the Beatles would come to watch their early rock and roll heroes, and here it became the venue at which they say goodbye to their hometown as the world at large swallowed them up. Or they swallowed it up, something like that. 5. Washington Coliseum, Washington DC, February 11th, 1964. First US concert. Doesn't get more historic than that unless you deliver one of the great sets in rock and roll history, and ding dong went the doorbell, the Beatles are here with a package for you. It's cute to see them start with George Harrison singing Roll Over Beethoven because their thinking is clearly that, well, we're new here, we're English, they probably like a song by one of their own to start things off. What this means is that the next number, From Me to You, which is jointly sung by Lennon and McCartney, would feature the two practically biting pieces out their microphones in their earnestness to show what they could do. The interplay between Starr and Harrison on the latter's guitar solo during I Saw Her Standing There is as charged as the insane guitar duel that would close out the end on Abbey Road 5 years later. Starr never drummed with more ferocity, happy ferocity, but ferocity nonetheless. Got a bead on you, America. 4. Circus Kronbau, Munich, Germany, June 24, 1966. Yes, the gig is sloppy, and if you want to play a game of Count the Flubs, you could go deep into the night with what remains of this Beatles set. But this is how they must have sounded when it got to be late at night on the Reeperbahn in those less bust-our-ass days of 1961 and 1962. The Beatles certainly mailed it in a bunch on their final global trek. There's some great fidelity on the extant recordings of their Tokyo recordings, starting a week after this German show, but with that fidelity, you notice their sterility. The Beatles were a blood and thunder pumping rhythm and blues band in their heart of hearts, and so it's appropriate that they flip that switch one last time with their return to Germany, where they once cut their teeth into wolf-like points. This is the first full band version of Yesterday. They sound like they've been up too long, but they still want to rock your balls off. 3. Palais des Sports, Paris, France, June 20th, 1965. The only time the Beatles performed an encore after becoming famous was at this Parisian evening gig. The Beatles hadn't gone over well in Paris the year before. This is the sound of a proper conquest after a failed first attempt. It's also one time that the crowd singing along is a boon on the chorus of Can't Buy Me Love. The setlist is a dazzling blend, mixing the always autumnal sounding Beatles for sale material with some kickers from A Hard Day's Night and singles like I Feel Fine, which was never easy to pull off with its tricky guitar opening and Latin sway beat, and newcomer Ticket to Ride. McCartney is gassed on the closing long tall Sally, almost saying the words, everything's alright. True at that. 2. Apple Rooftop, London, England, January the 30th, 1969. To the roof! Unable to finish their Get Back project, feeling themselves prisoners of the studio, the Beatles reverse engineer the sequence in A Hard Day's Night when they race down the fire escape for liberation and instead headed upwards. The one-off or one-offs, there is obviously no paying crowd, just local office workers with their heads stretched out their windows in disbelief. They do get back 3 times. Lennon's guitar is over loud as he plays the lead and the cops show up. This is the only time we get to hear the Beatles in a live context at a point when each player was among the best in the world on his respective instrument. 1. Karlaplan Studio, Stockholm, Sweden, October 24th, 1963. It is the loudest rock and roll anyone had ever recorded up until that point. The show was broadcast on Swedish national radio, so the extant sound is impeccable, with lots of chunky, efficacious distortion from the guitar amps. This was the first concert they'd given outside of England after reaching stardom. They yelp over the start of Money, trying to force Lennon to get a further rung up in his vocal intensity. He gets there. They're impeccably tight on the cover of Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, You Really Got a Hold on Me, and the closing twist and shout gives its famous studio counterpart a push. There you have it all, guys. Drop a thumb up in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you've not done that, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. The handles are in the description box below.